Fandme Cynthia. Came over here.
Woo! Cynthia.
What?
Welcome to Denmark.
Thank you. I'm an addict named Cynthia.
1 minute.
Hello.
Okay.
No.
I'm an addict named Cynthia. It's really
Hi,
an honor
Cynthia.
to be here. Hi. I am just so grateful to be here and grateful to be in the program of Narcotics Anonymous during this time. And I'm really grateful that we're all here. And I just want to take a moment to imagine that we're hugging each other. Like we're just hugging each other and holding each other. A big Narcotics Anonymous hug. Thank you. Because I miss hugs. I miss you guys. I miss that embrace. For a lot of us, it's the one thing that kept us coming back. And I apologize for the noise. The truck is out dropping something off. So if you can hear it, I apologize. So I think that's one of the things that kept me coming back to Narcotics Anonymous was, even though I didn't think that I was worthy of the hug, I was grateful for the hug. So welcome to anyone who's new. What a time to be clean. What a time to be going through what we all are going through during this pandemic. Each one of us are going through whatever it is we're going through on any given day. And I often say it's a good thing that we're not all messed up on the same day. Because I know for me, I sometimes feel like I'm closed in and I'm getting crazy and then the next day I'm fine. So I think I don't think that I'm unique anymore. I think that we're all going through what we're going through, and it is what it is. I feel for the people who are just getting clean, and I also feel for the people in the world that do not have what we have, the fellowship and the program of Narcotics Anonymous. I couldn't imagine going through this crisis that the whole world is in without Narcotics Anonymous. And you know, I was just thinking just now. I was thinking about all of the difficult times I've had in recovery have brought me to this moment, and I feel bad for people who don't know that they can get through this time because it feels like it's just too overwhelming and too scary. I think everything that's happened in my recovery has led me to this moment, and what I know is it's gonna work out however it's gonna work out. Nothing's gonna be the same. Everything will change. From my job, what I know is that people will leave. People will come into my life and go out of my life. Like you folks are coming into my life, and hopefully one day we'll be able to hug each other at a convention somewhere, right? And say, remember when. There'll be people who leave, whether they pass away or they just go away. That I know, because people have to get through this however they get through it. I came to Narcotics Anonymous in 1991, and I did not get clean until 1995. In those 4 years, coming in and out, I would come to meetings. I would sit in the parking lot in my car and I would use, and then I'd come into the meeting and I would sit in the back and I wouldn't look anybody in the eye because I knew if I looked people in the eye that they would know what a horrible person I was. And I did that. I went in and out for 4 years because I never thought that Narcotics Anonymous could work for a person like me. I thought that I was unique. Like I said, I thought I was worse than everybody else. And so in those 4 years, I came in and I heard the message, but like I said, I didn't think that I could get it. I would go in and out and in and out. I would go into the meetings with drugs in my pocket. I would use in the bathroom. I didn't think that I could ever not use. I didn't think that I could ever stop using. 5 minutes without using, I couldn't even imagine that. I couldn't imagine going a whole hour without putting drugs in my body. but I kept coming, and I kept coming because there was something special in the rooms. There was love. People were loving each other. And even though I didn't feel like I was worthy of that love, I I I somehow I thought that if I just hung out there, that maybe some of that love would rub off on me. And the other thing that attracted me to the rooms was the light in people's eyes, the light, the smiles on their faces. I started to hear that they had lived the same way that I had lived, and that they were smiling. And I couldn't even imagine, how could somebody smile if they lived the way that I lived, if they'd gone through the pain that I had gone through. So there was something about that that kept me coming back, that even though, I didn't think it could happen for me, I kept coming back. I was miserable. I was so miserable. I had so much shame. The shame felt like it was suffocating me. But I kept coming. And, one day I remember, after coming and listening, I was about 4 years into it. I remember I went upstairs in my house, and I put a chair underneath my fan on the ceiling, and I remember getting the belt from behind the door and wrapping the belt around the ceiling fan and stepping up on the chair and putting the belt around my neck, because I just didn't think that this program could ever work for me. And I remember putting it around my neck and going to step off the chair. And when I went to step off the chair, I had that moment that I knew I didn't really want to die. I just didn't want to go on living the way that I was living. And somehow I got my toe back on the chair, and I was able to get the belt off my neck. And I remember falling to the floor and in a fetal position and crying and wailing and screaming. And I felt like an animal. I was crying from the depths of my soul that, please, God, help me. And I asked God, I said, God, I can't live with drugs, and I can't live without them. Help me, God. And I didn't tell anybody that I tried to commit suicide that day, and I went on to use the next day, and I couldn't get high. That drug that had always took away my pain stopped working, and that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And so I used for about 6 more months, but I couldn't get high anymore. And at some point I just stopped using. I said, I'm going to give Narcotics Anonymous a try. I remember I was in a meeting, and they said, are there any burning desires? And my hand went up. And I remember my hand went up at the end of the meeting. That was like, who put my hand up, right? And it was God. And I said, my name's Cynthia. I'm an addict, and I just want to learn how to stop having sex for drugs. For me, one of the ways that I got my drugs was through sex, and that was one of the things that I had to work my steps around. One of the areas. And I remember that day, there was a woman in the back of the room, and she gave me her phone number, and I called her the next day. I got the courage to call her, because I was in so much pain. We get willingness when we get enough pain. And I called her, and I asked her if she would sponsor me. And she said, I'll sponsor you. She said, but if you don't want what I have, don't waste my time. She said, there's people here that want this information. And if you don't want to do the work, then don't waste my time. And I said, I'll do anything. At that point, I was finally in enough pain. I was willing to do anything. She said, I want you to start working the steps. And I started answering I answered the first question in the first step. And I called her, and I said, okay, I answered the first question. What do I do now? And she said, answer the second question. And this woman, she spoon fed me. She taught me she taught me how to get up in the morning and not use drugs. She taught me how to go to bed at night. She taught me how to get up and make my bed. She taught me how to be a mother. She taught me how to feed myself. She taught me how to be a wife. I didn't know how to do anything. I knew how to use. I'd never had a job. So I kept working the steps, and I remember coming to, and I kept knowing that I was going to use again. In my mind, I was going to use again. I knew I couldn't stay clean, but you guys told me that I could use as much as I want tomorrow. As long as I don't use today, I'll be okay. So I kept putting off using until tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to go buy a big bag of drugs, and I'm going to go buy a big bottle of whiskey to go along with it. And I kept putting it off and kept saying, tomorrow I'm going to use. And I came to my third step. Somehow in that third step, I remember taking my third step. And I remember hitting my knees, falling to the floor, and just knowing that I no longer had to fight, and that all I had to do now was to continue working the steps. And that's when the obsession and compulsion was lifted. Since that day, I haven't wanted to use. So I haven't had to put off using until tomorrow since then. I went on to work. I called my sponsor as I was working that fourth step. I told her that I was done on my fourth step, and she said, "Did you write everything down?" And I said, "No, not everything." And she said, "Call me back when you're done." And she hung up on me. She wanted to make sure that I was going to put everything down there. And I remember it was a day, it was a week, it wasn't very long. I don't know exactly how long it was, but I called her back and I said, okay, I put everything down on the paper. And we got together, and I shared all those secrets with her, all that shame that I had came in with, all the things that had been done to me in my childhood. You know, I'm the youngest of 7, and I grew up in a home where everybody used drugs. So it felt like as a young child, I grew up in a war zone, because there was always something happening in that house. And I had a lot of trauma, and I didn't, and when I first got to Narcotics Anonymous, I thought I deserved it all, and I thought that it was all my fault, but I've done a lot of work on myself. Come to find out, you know, I was just a child that was having to deal with some stuff that I shouldn't have had to deal with. And because in my family, the disease of addiction is generational. It goes on and on and on through our generations. And I was able to break the family cycle. Being the youngest one, I'm the only one that found Narcotics Anonymous. My brothers and sisters have all been sick or died from this disease. I have 3 siblings left, and they're very sick. And you know, when I was 15 years old, I had my daughter. I was a little young girl that had a baby, and you know, my daughter had to grow up with a mom who was strung out on drugs, and my daughter came down with the disease of addiction, and my daughter hated me. She hated me. She was angry at me. She was angry at me when I got clean. She was 21 years old when I got clean. My son was 10 years old when I got clean. And she was angry at me because she said, you dragged me through your addiction, and now you're going to get clean. She was so angry. But I didn't realize at the time I got clean that she also had the disease of addiction. And my daughter ended up going to prison behind her addiction. And when I was about 8 years clean, a lot of things happened in my life at about 8 years clean. My mom started to get sick. I was in an abusive relationship. I had been in an abusive marriage since I was a year. Well, actually, I was married to him when I got clean. At 8 years clean, I finally left that relationship. My mom, so I was in pain around leaving that relationship. My mom was dying. My daughter was getting out of prison, and my son was gone, and he was homeless. And so that was my eighth year. All of that happened at the same time. And then shortly after my daughter got out of prison, I met my friend Gilbert, and I asked my friend Gilbert out on a date. A lot happened in that year. And then shortly after that, my mom got really sick. She had been really sick, and she was in the hospital. My daughter was with me the day that my mom my mom died, we were both there together, and my daughter to this day thanks me for showing her how to show up in the difficult times. My ex-husband decided he was going to try to have me killed, and so I got a phone call, and this is all in my 8th year. I got a phone call from a police detective telling me that I needed to get to safety, that he was going to be arrested for trying to have a hitman cause me harm. And so, you know, just trying to get through all that 8th year clean, that 8th year clean prepared me for this pandemic. You know, like when I talked earlier about when we go through really difficult times and get through it, we find that we have a strength that's not our own. It says that in one of our readings. And I certainly know that I didn't do anything but just relied on the God of my understanding for it all. So I got to safety. He was arrested. My friend Gilbert, when I asked him out, we started dating. My daughter and I started to get a relationship. My daughter got out of prison and she started coming to Narcotics Anonymous. Yeah, so the daughter, she hated me, you know, and she doesn't hate me anymore. She's pretty proud of her mom today, and we have an amazing relationship. Both of my children are in this program. Both of my children, my son has about 40 days clean, and my daughter, at the end of this month on the 28th, will celebrate 16 years clean. Her and her husband both are clean 16 years because they came into this program and surrendered. This program has changed my family's life. So when I asked my friend Gilbert out, we started dating. My mom was dying at the time, and my friend Gilbert started to visit with my mom at the hospital when she'd stopped eating, and she was this cute little old lady that was she was so cute. She was like this frail little old lady, right? And she really wanted my friend Gilbert there all the time. He's also in the program, and she would say, "I want him to come visit me." And he started to go visit her, and my mom fell in love with my friend. She had Alzheimer's, and she would always ask for him to come. And she would say, "Have him come." And then she told him one day, she goes, "One day I'm going to marry you," is what she told him. And he laughed. She's like, "One day I'm going to marry you and take you to Alabama." My mother was from Alabama, which is very racist. And he's a Hispanic guy. So it was just so cute that she had fallen in love with him. And she kept telling him, "I'm going to marry you one day." And, you know, when my mom passed away, she was in love with my friend. And I didn't, I let her have that experience. In fact, a week before they passed away, they had a fake wedding. And my mom didn't know it was fake, but she really wanted to be married to him. And so Henry and Tina were there. They're members of this fellowship. And my friend Gilbert married my mom in the eyes of God on that day. And what she said to him that day, she said, "One day she said, when I'm gone, you can have my daughter Cindy." And he laughed, and she said, "She's my best one." So a couple years later, I married my dad. And you know, it's because of this fellowship. It's because of this program that my mother was happy when she passed away. She was in love, and I had never seen. My dad died in 1961 when I was 18 months old, and she had never been with anybody but the end of her life. Because of this program and the people in this program, they gave her that gift of being in love, and I wasn't about to take that from her. And so, you know, after that happened, I fell in love with him during that time, and he had already told me that he had liver disease, that he had end-stage liver disease. And shortly before we at the World Convention in Hawaii, we were supposed to travel to Hawaii, and he got really sick and was hospitalized. And then he started to get really, really sick, and the doctor said if he didn't have a liver transplant right soon, he would die. And that was, it was a very, very difficult time. So for about 7 years of at the beginning of our marriage, we were on, we didn't really get to set boundaries or have a relationship that people normally have in the early relationship. Like I didn't get to find out what he liked, or he didn't get to find out what I liked, because every day it was about trying to save his life. We were at either a doctor's, or he was going to the emergency room, where he was bleeding out, or something was happening. His liver was shutting down, and he was dying. And the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, this fellowship, he's very involved in H&I. He's always been involved in the prisons. He spent time in San Quentin prison, so he does a lot of H&I there. He's done a lot of H&I in the just in that anywhere. He's always been willing to help the still suffering addict. So what happened in 2012, he had come to the place where he was either going to get a liver transplant or he wasn't going to make it. My daughter, the daughter that hated me, no longer hates me. She said, "Mom, I want to try to give him part of my liver." And so she went to UC San Francisco and did all the tests to see if she could give him part of her liver. And they said, yes, she can do that. And then a week before the surgery was planned, we had a surgery date, and the doctor said he couldn't have a living donor transplant. His body was too high risk. He would have to have a cadaver liver, a liver from a dead person. And so my daughter decided at that point that she was going to go ahead and donate part of her liver altruistically to it. And the doctors there in San Francisco found a young girl, a 17-year-old girl. And my daughter was able to donate part of her liver to this young girl that she didn't know. And my husband was getting really sick at that time, and he kept telling me he was tired, and he said, "I don't want to go to the doctors anymore." And so the day of the surgery, the day that she gave that young girl part of her liver, I asked my husband at that time, I said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "If you want to just stay home and not fight anymore, I'll honor that. I'll take care of you until the end." And I said, "If you want to fight and you want to try to go out," because the doctor said that he could have a liver, there was no livers available in California. And the doctor said we could get a liver somewhere else in the United States. And my husband, I asked him, and he said he wanted to fight, that he wanted to. He said, "But we don't have the money to go to anywhere else, because we don't have a lot of money, just like most people. We're not rich." But I said to him, if you tell me you want to fight, if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. And he said, "I want to fight." And the minute he said that, the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous started to fundraise for us. And before you knew it, we were flying to Florida to the Mayo Clinic, and we went down there, and they said that he was too high risk, that they couldn't help him. And I called he called his insurance, the transplant coordinator, and I said, "Florida says that they can't help us." And she said that you might try Omaha, Nebraska. And I was like, "Where the hell is Omaha, Nebraska?" And so we flew from Florida to Omaha, Nebraska the very next day. We got there, and the transplant surgeon came in after they did his evaluation, and she said, "I can do this surgery. We can do it." And so we were in Omaha, Nebraska for 5 months before they did the surgery, because of the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous and the people that just surrounded us with love. My husband had a life-saving transplant on March 20th of 2013, and he just celebrated 7 years with his new liver. And he's very healthy. And so it's been, and I got to tell you guys that he got well really fast, and I didn't, because of the trauma through the whole thing, going to the emergency rooms every week, never being able to express my emotions. I was just always at the emergency room. It took me about a year. I took off work after we got home for a year and did some therapy around my PTSD. And finally, I was able to, start to feel okay around working with others, because I'm a counselor, and I knew that couldn't do my work if I was in trauma all the time. One of the things that happened before we left is I walked away from my job and I walked away from my home. We lost everything. But when we got back, we got everything back. Like, I got a better job and I got a better house, right? So we had given away all of our stuff because we knew that we had to give away all of our stuff to save his life. It comes down to the material things or for his life. We just got rid of all the stuff. So, my husband's life has been saved. My children are both in recovery. My son has relapsed a lot over the years, and he's doing the best he's ever done. And I'm so grateful for that. And, as a mother, I need to treat my kids the same way I treat any newcomer coming in the door. I don't need to be mad at my kids for relapse, and I need to love them and say, man, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you that you're the coffee maker. I'm proud of you that you're the literature person. I'm so proud of you, because I know for me, when people tell me how horrible I'm doing, I don't hear that. But you tell me how, you see that I'm doing okay, then I can relate to that. I can respond to that. So I try to make sure that I come from a place of love to my children and anyone, my staff. I believe that people live up to what you tell them, or they live down to it. If I'm always telling somebody they're doing a shitty job, then they're going to do a shitty job. If I tell them that they're doing a great job, they're going to try to do better. And because that's what works for me. And so, what else do I need to tell you? I am 25 years clean. I celebrated in January. And I don't know. I just know that, the steps. I can tell you that I love the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. The steps have changed me, especially the 6th and 7th step. I worked through the steps and I shared with my sponsor everything. And then I got a new sponsor at 3 years clean. And the second sponsor that I had, she gave me such a great gift. She gave me the gift of the 6th and 7th. I shared with her my 5th step, and then we went on to the 6th step, and she said, I want you to identify 100 character defects. And I said, I don't have one character defect. How am I going to find 100, right? And she just laughed, and she's like, let's go back to your 5th step, and I'll help you to understand what a character defect is. And we went back to my 5th step, and she showed me where I stole money from my mom. I stole money from my mother, the money that my mother was saving for her funeral. I stole money. I was a thief. Where I had never had a job in my life, I was irresponsible, right? And she started to help me to understand what character defects were. And then she said in the 7th step, I ended up writing on a whole bunch of character defects. And then she said in the 7th step, I just want you to identify the spiritual opposites. And she said, I want you to start practicing the spiritual opposite of the character defect. And she just gave it to me so simple that I was able to understand. And so, I started to be able to practice responsibility. I ended up going to work, and ended up going to school. I didn't think that I didn't think that I was smart enough to go to college. My head told me I wasn't smart enough. And I started going to college and found out that I was really smart, and that I could learn. And so I started to study, and I ended up getting a job at the Air Force Base making sandwiches in the mess hall. I showed up every day. I clocked in on time. I clocked out. I earned my first paycheck, and I got some self-esteem. We get self-esteem by doing esteemable things. And it's the little things showing up over and over and over again. We start to feel good about ourselves. And so that's what happened for me. Is I started practicing the spiritual opposites of those character defects, and now they're embedded in me over all these years. I'm so grateful for that woman, because she introduced me to who I really am. She gave me that, such a great gift. And you know, I've gone on to work the steps. I truly believe in the steps. I love that we get to change and become who we're supposed to be through the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. That's our soul work. That's the work that changes our soul. And I'm not all those sexual behaviors that I did. That's not who I am. Just what I did is not who I am. And I totally understand why today. I know that I was a sick, suffering addict when I got to Narcotics Anonymous. When I think back and think of how I came into Narcotics Anonymous and how I hated myself and so much self-loathing, man, you know, and blamed myself for everything. And I was just, I was a sick end stage, you know, I was late stage addiction. I was close, well, obviously I was close to death, because I didn't die that day that I tried to commit suicide. But I'm really grateful for the steps. The steps have changed me and helped me become a whole human being. I still show up. I still am of service. I just moved into a small little place. We sold our big house and we downsized because both of us want to retire. And just in January, I'm going to wash my shirt after I get done, you guys. We sold our big house and moved into the small place, and because we want to be able to afford to live in California and be close to our grandkids. And so we sold our house, we moved, and then right after we moved here is when the pandemic happened. And we were able to get our house funded, and everything happened like the week before they shut everything down. So I know that it's God's will for us to be here, because, yeah, I just know that it's God's will for us to be here. We're going to be okay. We do worry that if my husband gets the COVID-19, he won't be able to fight it off because his compromised immune system, because of the anti-rejection meds. We know that. And so he has been in the house. It's been over a month that I've been home, working from home. They sent him home shortly after that, and he's just here because he really understands that it's his responsibility to take this serious. And so we've both been doing our own thing. We're in a small place. He's in one side of the house and I'm in the other. He tells me sometimes, hey, he goes, a couple days ago, he goes, I'm going to the room. He goes, I'll come out at chow time. He goes, I'm going to my cell. And we laugh because, you know what, we got it good. This is not a prison cell. It really isn't. At least we can walk outside. You know, when I sat down today, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I knew that it was going to be emotional. I talked to my coworker before I got on this call, and she asked me if I've been able to see my grandkids. And I started to cry because I haven't been able to see my grandbabies. You know, I had my daughter at 15 and she had my son at 15. So I became a grandmother at 31. And then I became a great grandmother 5 years ago. And my great grandson, his birthday is today. So we're going to drive up there and drive past the house and honk the horn for my great grandson. But it's hard to not, you know, these people, these little ones love me. They love to wrap their arms around me, and they haven't been able to, and it's hard. And it's, you know, we're all going to have to work whatever we have to work around. Even the little ones, they're going to have to go through some stuff around not being able to hug their grandmother when they were at a certain age. And I know that all of us have to deal with our trauma around this. And the thing is we all have to. We all have something that's, you know, that we're having to deal with, whether it's our own health or being locked up in a house with a bunch of kids or losing our jobs or fear of losing our homes. It's all of it. And you know what the amazing blessing is that we get to be together to do it. We get to help each other get through it. And I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. And I hope one day that I get to, like, if you ever see me in a convention, whether it's a world convention or whatever, please, 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 let's embrace each other. That's all I got. Thanks.